Thanks everyone for joining. Tonight we have the Acton Police Department. Special thanks to Chief Burrows and all the other officers to talk with us tonight. So tonight's agenda will be an introduction from Chief Burrows and then an overview of the police department and some recent program highlights. So after the introductions, we will have some prepared questions, and then we'll open up for more questions and answers. Everyone, if you're not talking, please mute yourself. You can put your questions in the chat window. We will pick them up at the Q&A session. Take it away, Chief Burrows.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. I've been with the Acton Police Department for the past 8 years. Prior to that, I worked in Tingsboro for 27 years. I'll celebrate my 35th anniversary in law enforcement on June 1st. We have other members of the team here tonight. I'd like to introduce each of them and then ask them to just say a couple brief things about themselves. Deputy Chief Kogan.
Good evening, folks. It's a pleasure as well to be here to speak with you and share information about the police department here in Acton. I started in 1984. I stopped counting. I've been here for a long time, and it's a great community, and I enjoy serving. I raised my family, or my children here in Acton. They're soon to be 30 and 28, moved out. And so again, it's my pleasure to be here, and hopefully we can answer some questions you might have concerning the operations of the police department and what we offer to the community.
Two successful graduates of Acton Boxborough Regional High School. And Jim, I think you were the school resource officer for a period of time as well?
Yes, actually, I was the first DARE officer in Acton beginning in 1988. So I served in that role for 5 years, and it was an enjoyable part of my monotonous but enjoyable time for me on the police department.
Thank you. And we have Lieutenant Doug Sterniolo with us tonight.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for hosting. As the chief said, my name is Doug Sterniolo. I'm a lieutenant here with the police department. Began my career here in 2000, so it's just over 20 years. I oversee the Special Service Division. It's comprised of, we have criminal investigators, prosecution department, traffic division, school resource officers. We also have Mike Araclio, who you're going to meet, who is part of our family service unit, and an accreditation team, and also dispatch. So we're pretty busy over here. And again, thank you for hosting.
Anything special in dispatch this week, Doug?
Yes, this week is telecommunicators on public safety, National Public Safety Telecommunications Week. Sorry about that. So this week, every year, we recognize the dispatchers for all their hard work and dedication that they do to serve the community in the town. So it's a nice way to say thank you to the dispatchers, because they're basically the unsung heroes. They don't get much recognition, so it's nice to do that every year.
They are our first responders. When you call 911, those are the voices that you hear that'll start dispatching police, fire, and ambulance to your emergency. Next, we have Detective Mike Araclio.
All right, thank you, Chief, and appreciate everyone giving us the opportunity to speak with you this evening. I respect everyone's time, and I really appreciate the fact that you guys wanted to meet with us this evening. Mike Araclio, 15 years with Acton PD, and right now assigned to our Family Service Division. And what that really does is we conduct outreach and follow-ups to all calls that really go out in town involving mental health, domestic violence, elder services, and any community engagement that needs to be done. So, you know, we saw that there was a missing piece as far as what we could do after calls. So the initial calls will go out by patrol. They'll take a report, and then follow-up will be conducted by our team. And what we do is we help people sometimes, navigate through different services, or just connect them with services such as therapeutic services, detox, domestic violence advocates, helping them walk through the court system. And then our jail diversion program, which what we try to do is work with all residents in town to stay out of court and, lower our rate of recidivism and, dealing with the same people and over again. A lot of times if we just help them do a few different things, we can put them on a different path, and that's our goal. So thank you for having us.
Thank you, Michael. Sergeant Scott Krug.
Hi, good evening. I've been with the department for a little over 20 years. Last 6 as a sergeant. I just recently moved into special services, supervising the family services and the school resource officers. They just added the liaison branch, which is developing slowly. This is part of the process that we're here today, speaking with you people.
Thank you, Scott. And Detective John Stackhouse.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for having us here, and much appreciated, like Mike said, for opening up the dialogue and having you guys meet with us. Been here for 17 years in the department, doing a lot of community outreach stuff for many, many years. Just recently acquired our first service dog program, Zane. Come here, Zane. Up. There's Zane. Can you say hi? Zane, speak. Speak. Okay, good. So that's about it. Zane and I are in the schools, just starting to get back in the schools now with some restrictions being lifted. And we're out in the community every single day, talking, meeting with people. We're working a lot, starting to work a lot with children in the school systems that are having some issues going back to school. Again, like Mike said, mental health issues, certain domestic violence victims, with certain situations that it's easier. We use Zane as an icebreaker tool to open up that communication and dialogue. And very excited to answer any questions you guys may have tonight. So thank you.
And John's been instrumental in the 911 memorial we have at the PSF and the Miracle Field up at Narra Park, to name a few of his different endeavors. I think I got everybody from our team. So what I'd like to do is just talk a little bit about your department. We have 43 sworn officers, and we have 9 telecommunicators that work full-time, 24/7, 365 to handle any emergencies that come into town. A lot of our town departments are open, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. They stay open later on Tuesdays now. But basically after hours, if you're having an issue and you can't get a hold of anybody, who are you going to call? You're going to call the police, and we're going to come out and we're going to try to help you as best we can. We mentioned National Public Safety Telecommunicators Week. I'm very proud to announce that we recently were accredited back in January. Doug Sturniolo is a member of the accreditation team, and it's the Massachusetts Police Accreditation Commission. There's 2 levels. The lowest, the first, is certification, which we achieved back in 2019. We had met the approximately 159 standards. And then to become accredited, you have to meet another over 250 standards. And we met those. We got assessed back in October, and we got awarded by the commission in January. And that lets you know that your police department has met all the requirements to meet those standards. Those standards make sure that we're doing the things that we should be doing. We have a good use of force. We have good policies. We have good systems in place to make sure that we're doing all the things we should be doing. Evidence room inspections, reviewing every year. We review use of force reports. We review pursuit reports. And those are just to name a few of the things that we do. When our insurance company walks through to check the building every year, when they see the accreditation plaque on the wall, they can check off pages 3 and 4 because they know fire extinguishers have all been checked. In the booking area, there's a map of how to get out of the building in case of a fire. The generator's been load tested, so if we lose power, the public safety facility keeps going on with the generator and can run for several days on generator power. So that's a big accomplishment for us. And we're proud to be able to do that, to let you know that we're doing all the things that we should be doing. The three biggest issues we're dealing with in the town of Acton are domestic violence, mental health, and substance use. We partner with DVSN, Domestic Violence Services Network. They're a team of volunteers, advocates that help us to follow up when we have situations in town. We make referrals to them. They'll make referrals even if we don't make an arrest, but we have a situation we think there's a controlling relationship and somebody could use some help. They'll actually come to court with victims as well as the Middlesex County Victim Witness Advocates. It's a great program to address our domestic violence issues in town. When they do their yearly reports, we are the department that makes the most referrals. I don't necessarily think we have more domestic violence in Acton than they do in our neighboring communities, but I think that because of all the training we've done, they offer a 40-hour advocate program training for their advocates. And we send our police officers and our dispatchers through so we can see it from another side. We typically are trained in the academy to come at it from an enforcement point of view. And young officers might be frustrated when they go to a house and they witness domestic violence. The wife takes out a restraining order, and then a couple weeks later, she wants to drop it. And the young officers are like, what is she doing? Why is she doing this? After going through the 40-hour advocate program, you have a better understanding of why she's doing it and some of the things that we can do to support victims in town. I've been through it. I think most of the command staff's been through it. Everybody on the police department here tonight has been through it as well. And once we get past the COVID restrictions, we'll be joining them again in their training classes. That's the biggest issue, domestic violence. The second is mental health. And the third is substance use. Michael mentioned the jail diversion program that we have. We partner with all the communities that answer to Concord District Court. We got a grant from the Department of Mental Health a few years ago, and we share a clinician. Because of our need in town, we actually have the clinician in town 1 day a week, and that's Mackenzie. And she follows up with Mike Araklio, or if she's here and a call comes in, she can co-respond. We are actually working right now on another grant with the Department of Mental Health to see if we can bring a full-time clinician into the town. Hopefully we can get that up and running for next year. The responding to mental calls for mental health, there's a national question dialogue out there about who's best to respond to these issues. If you know it's a mental health, there's plenty of hotlines that people can call, but a lot of times we don't just get a call from the person who's in crisis. We get a call from a family member, a friend, a neighbor, there's some type of disturbance, something's happening. So we tend to be the first responders. We've trained 80% of our department in crisis intervention training, which is a 40-hour training. All of our officers have gone through an 8-hour mental health first aid training. So we're very well in tune with how to respond to the various issues. Offer services, offer referrals, try not to use an arrest to calm the situation. And then Michael and Mackenzie typically do the follow-ups. And we're seeing a lot of great results in the follow-ups. We're seeing less calls, less repeat calls. We're seeing people who were connected at one point to services, got disconnected, we're able to reconnect them. We've got people who don't know where to go, and we're able to offer them referrals and services. So the program is working. We're not going to eliminate mental health calls in town, but we respond to them in a very, very educated and appropriate manner to handle them as best we can. And I'm hoping we get that grant so we can offer even more clinician hours in town. We had a clinician for a few years, Aaliyah, and then she left to go on to another job. And we had a period of time between Aaliyah and Mackenzie where we didn't have a clinician in town. And Michael stepped in while he was a school resource officer and filled that role. And after he did that for several months and Aaliyah came on board, we recognized that we needed Michael to come out of the school resource officer position, come into a family services and offer those on a larger basis. And he's been doing a great job since he's been in there. And the newest program I wanted to talk about was the liaison program. And the program is designed for us to do as much community outreach with any groups that'll have us, basically. It was great to get this offer. After we talked to the Lions Club, Juan reached out to me and said, would you be interested? And I said, absolutely. That's a great idea. I'd love to talk to anybody to listen to us and tell you some of the things that we're doing. And it gives you the opportunity to meet us, to put a name to a face, and ask a question. You might have questions here tonight that you aren't going to call the station. You're not going to call 911. You're not going to stop into the station and ask. If we were less COVID restricted and you happen to see us at a large event, a town meeting, some event in West Acton, you can walk over to us and ask us. But right now it's kind of hard because we've got that, 6 feet of separation pretty much everywhere we go. It's just a great opportunity for people to ask us questions. And it's nice that I have a big team so I can share the questions with other members of the team. So you don't just have to hear me drone on for a long period of time. So that's the overview of the departments and some of the programs we're working on, some of our biggest issues in town. And I'd like to open it up for questions.
Thanks, Chief Burrows. For folks who joined late, we are going to the questions and answer section. We are having some prepared questions answered first. If you have any questions, please put it in the chat window. We'll get to them. So first question, what are the major concerns regarding the safety issues in and around Acton? Does the police department have sufficient resource to work on the issues or need more budget? So
I think the biggest issues are the ones I mentioned, the domestic violence, the mental health and substance use. And, I guess you could always use more help, but I think we have a good allotment of officers right now to handle the calls for service we have. If the population was to grow 5, 6, 7,000 more people, we might have to look at more offices. But right now, I think it's a good sized department to meet the needs of the community.
Thanks. Next question. Is Acton a safe town to live for Asian Americans? How many hate crimes have been reported so far this year?
So far this year, I think we've only had 2 hate crimes, and we haven't had a hate crime targeting an Asian individual since I think 2015. And I think it's safe, but I'd like to hear from the people here on this call what their thoughts are on being an Asian American in Acton, and if they've had any issues that we should be aware of or should be aware of.
Yeah. So next question. What action will the police take if someone reports a racist incident? What will you do to prevent or reduce the further occurrence of such incidents?
Okay. So most of the hate crimes that we're seeing in town are basically graffiti, and the vast majority of the graffiti tends to be swastikas. And most of our suspects appear to be juveniles. And one of the things we do with juveniles is we are part of the Communities for Restorative Justice. If anybody's interested in reading more about it, it's c4rj.com. And Michael, do you want to talk about the restorative justice process and some of the circles you've been in and some of the things that kids have learned about swastikas that they didn't know about before?
Absolutely. So the restorative justice process, at first, when you hear about it, you're not sure if there's full buy-in from everyone. And until I had a chance to really go through the process and understand it myself. What we try to do is we take primarily juveniles, people up to the age of 18 and sometimes further, but Acton primarily sits with people up to the age of 18 for this program. And what we do is we divert them away from the juvenile justice system by offering them, at first what they have to do is if they did any hate crimes, for example, I'll use a swastika written on a middle school building. They have to admit that they did that. So the first step in that process is for them to take ownership, which a lot of youth do not like to do or tend to do. So the beginning of the program is beautiful where they get to sit there and say, yes, I did it, along with their parents. They get to be part of the process. And they have an opportunity to sit down with the victim if the victim feels that they would like to participate. So it's literally a circle, and you take the group of individuals involved. So with that incident, we had a victim, say the school, so a representative from the school. We had a representative from the Jewish faith-based community. we had a member of, I think it was a Society for Jewish Studies. And then we had some police officers in the room. Then we had the families that were involved, at least the suspects and their parents. And you sit down in a circle and you discuss the elements of that crime and what happened. After you do that brief circle and summary, you show them if you weren't involved in this program, this is what would have happened to you at court. We've learned over the years that, you know, the justice system sometimes is so fast that, especially the youth, where we're trying to keep them out of that, you know, pipeline to prison in a sense, is that they may get community service and move on with their life, but the victim never has a chance to become whole again, or maybe even understand why that may have happened to them. If your mailbox was smashed tonight and you never get to find out who did it or have any follow-up, you know, the rest of your time is sitting there saying, was I targeted? Is it because I'm Asian? Is it because I'm Italian? Is it because I'm Jewish? With this process, we get to sit the suspect and the victim in the room, and the victim gets to either write down an impact statement or speak about how they felt on the night that it occurred or the day after they found out that it happened. And then the juvenile gets to understand and see the impact it had on another individual. When we had the swastika say on the junior high, these you know, two individuals that were involved, you know, they weren't even of the understanding of what the swastika symbol actually meant and what it meant to the community members who saw it. They did see it on a video game. They had done some additional spray painting that they saw in a video game, but they didn't understand the root meaning of it and how it affected people in the community, even when they just saw it or heard that it happened. And the assignments are, it's a 3-month process. And each week they meet with a member of the community and they have dialogue about things that they have to do, assignments they have to complete. Be it visit the Jewish Memorial in Boston, write an apology letter. If they had some issues with us, maybe not at first telling us the truth about what occurred, they might write an apology letter to police. They might do some community service in town. And then the victim finally gets to sit there and on the final circle, they sit there and have that discussion. What have you learned in the last 3 months? You know, how has this process changed your life? Do you understand what it did to me? And to me, that's one of the most powerful things I've ever seen in our system, is that the victim has a chance to become whole again. So that program is something that the first time I saw it, I at first wasn't sure if it was good, because as a police officer, you go through the police academy, you want to catch the bad guys, you want to put them in jail. But now you see how this program works, and it keeps people out of jail and it educates them. And that's really what our programs are here to do. We're doing our best to connect with the town, connect with our youth, and educate them on what they do. Sometimes they just don't understand what they're doing, and we were all kids and we all made mistakes. We can all raise our hand to something that we likely did that maybe wasn't appropriate. But if you had someone there to mentor and guide you, it can change your path, and that's really what we're looking to do. So the program is wonderful, and if you have a chance to look it up online, I'd recommend that.
There's a couple of short videos on C4RJ. We hosted the video shoot, and our detective Keith Campbell, who's currently an acting sergeant, was the star of the show in terms of the police participation in those videos. And it's nice. There's a couple of quick videos from the offender perspective, from the victim perspective, and it's really a short, little, concise way to really feel what it feels like to be in a circle. They're great videos. I highly recommend them.
Thank you. Next question. Are there any additional measures in place in Acton in light of recent increase in anti-Asian incidents?
We haven't done anything specific. We haven't had, like I said, we haven't had anything since 2015 in terms of any type of things targeted at the Asian community.
Thanks. What are your recommended actions for residents who encounter a racist incident?
Call us. Give us a call. Let us take a report. We'll investigate it. Michael is our civil rights officer. So at the end of the year, when we compile all the different hate crimes we had, we go through and we analyze them to decide what we're going to report to the state police, which in turn hand those over to the FBI.
Thanks. As hate crimes are spiking these days, could you suggest some self-defense gadgets?
Deputy, you want to take a stab at that one?
Sure. I want to stress how safe the community is. You know, I've been here for a long time, and the crimes that we see committed are typically the ones Chief Burrows has spoken about. I don't think there's a need for most people to have any type of defensive weapon with them. Although it's certainly your right to have pepper spray, which is sometimes comforting for people to have if they're walking through isolated areas. So I would say, you know, my recommendation if someone was looking for some type of defensive device is pepper spray is something that is easily obtained. You can go to Cabela's. There's no license required. And it's, again, it's pretty easily obtained on the internet or as well as some big box stores.
Thanks. What is the process to legally own or keep a gun? Is the process different for citizen and legal residents?
Massachusetts has some of the strictest gun laws in the nation. Mass General Law, Chapter 140 covers all firearms licensing. If somebody wants to apply for a gun license, there's a couple of different licenses too. There's an FID, firearms identification card, where you can keep a weapon in your home. And then there's a license to carry if you wanted to take a weapon with you to and from work, to and from a firing range. And we have a form down at the police station. You can actually get it online as well to apply for a firearms permit. And there's a background process that goes on. There's a check through the mental health system. And then there's a fingerprint section to make sure that there's no criminal history. And then the permit can be issued at that time. But it takes a couple of months to go through the whole process.
Is the process different for citizens and legal residents?
I believe you have to be a United States citizen to apply. I'd have to check on that.
If we can get the forms or the typical packet and make that available to anyone that's interested through Kevin Heffernan, our licensing officer. So if anyone has further interest, I'll provide the email of the person who handles the issuance of our firearms license. And you can certainly direct any type of questions like that to Kevin Heffernan. And I'll put his email in the chat.
And we send Kevin to training twice a year because the gun laws are constantly changing and it's hard to stay on top of it. So he's our gun licensing expert.
Great, thank you. What is the best approach to deal with a home intruder?
Lieutenant Sterniolo, you want to take a shot at that one?
Sure, Chief. I would say that the best defense would probably be is to we want to prevent the intruder, which I'm probably sure most are familiar with the Ring doorbell cameras and the Blink security systems. They're readily available. They're fairly inexpensive these days. And you can download the app on your phone so you can monitor and get notifications. I've seen even people have security signs that they have outside just to prevent anyone coming on their property or, to deter a break-in or something similar. I can't remember the last time that we actually had a breaking and entering that was recorded on a system or somebody that had a security system. Almost all of them that we've had have been someone that left the doors unlocked, not home, those things of that nature. Otherwise, if you are in the home, you always want to make sure you have an escape route, access to a phone that you can call 911. So that would be the recommendation if it actually did take place. You want to keep yourself safe and call us as soon as possible.
We've seen very few people try to break into a home when there's somebody, when the resident is home. They don't want to interact with people. If they're trying to break into a house, they're trying to grab something to make some quick money to get some drugs. That's typically what we see. And if there is somebody, if they come in the home and they see somebody there, they're usually trying to make as much distance between them and the homeowner as they can. They don't want to be seen. They don't want to be engaged with anybody.
If I could
done-
just add one other thing? Talking about homes, that's one thing, but also vehicles, that's a typical crime that we deal with from time to time, is people leaving things in their vehicles that are easily accessible to thieves that routinely, come through town, hit a certain neighborhood or neighborhoods. So a recommendation for all is to get in the habit of locking your cars, your vehicles as well, and don't leave things easily accessible within them.
Good advice, thank you. I'm done with the prepared questions, so I'm gonna read through the questions that's put in the chat window. Could you give us some clarifications in what scenario we should call the police station versus the 911?
I would say, if you're not sure, call 911. If you're calling to talk to Detective Heffernan about a gun permit, obviously that's the business line. But if you're not sure and you're nervous about something, you can certainly call 911 and they can redirect it if it's not something that they need to send an emergency response right away, or have somebody call you back. But if you're not sure, just call 911. You're going to talk to the same dispatcher you're going to talk to on the business line. And also, to expand on that, within the past couple of years, we've taken the opportunity from the 911, state 911, to start bringing in cell phone calls to the Public Safety Communication Center. So not every phone, not every carrier, but most, when you call 911 in Acton, it should hit the tower. If it grabs your location, it'll direct it directly to our station. So you'll be talking to somebody in Acton. If it doesn't catch it, it'll go to one of the regional centers, and then they'll find out where you are and redirect it to us. But we've taken, I think, phase 1 and phase 2 calls. So we're receiving most of the 911 calls that are generated from the town of Acton. And we have most of the location information once you call.
Thank you. Is there any volunteer opportunities in the station available to the general public?
Right now, we're still in COVID mode, but as we come out of it, there's we've had different people come in. Sometimes we'll have an intern come in from college who's in the criminal justice program, wants to learn more. Typically in the spring, we'll have a couple of high school students come in. We typically have 2 that are both interested in criminal justice, and they'll spend a couple of weeks at the station with one of the school resource officers. We also have a senior program in town where seniors can try to get abatements off their taxes by working in different departments in town. And we've used a couple of seniors working in the records department. So here and there, we have different opportunities.
What is the average response time in Acton after a 911 call?
I don't have it off the top of my head. I want to say we just did the reports, Jimmy, that big packet I sent out. I want to say it's 2 or 3 minutes. It's hard to categorize those, because if we get 3 different 911 calls at the same time, one's a motor vehicle accident, one's calling because there's a suspicious person walking down the street, and another call is a domestic, we're going to send all the cruisers to the accident and the domestic first. And if we have enough bodies, we'll send somebody to the suspicious person call. But that call might have to get stacked. So in the system, that call came in, but it wasn't answered as quickly as the other 2 calls. So when I look at 911 calls, it gives me all the 911 calls for the year and then gives me an average response time. So because of those scenarios, the really important, life-threatening calls, we get there really quickly.
Have the Acton police ever had an opportunity to do the restorative justice with an adult offender, particularly with regard to race-based offense?
I'm trying to think. I don't know if we've had any adults. If you go to the C4RJ website, they had an adult case, I think it was in Concord, and it was an adult threatening a soccer coach after a game. So they actually did that one. But I don't think we've had any adults C4RJ circles. Mike, are you aware of any?
No, none that I'm aware of. We've definitely had 17, I guess 18, some seniors. We've definitely done it with them, and they'd be on the adult threshold. But another program tends to go up to 21. And in the court system now, even for the adult in the Concord court system, they'll do a similar program post-arraignment. We do things before they get arraigned, before they go to court and get charges. The court has now done a post-arraignment, almost restorative justice program for them as well. So the court kind of got on board with some of that as well.
Thanks. What's the local phone number for not the emergency 911 call for?
The
please?
business line is 978-929-7711.
Thanks. Have you seen a spike on marijuana-related crimes, especially for adolescents?
I think we saw a spike when they first legalized it, but I think that's dropped off. We haven't had a lot of marijuana-related crimes in the past year or so. Of course, it's tough because we're coming out of COVID as well. So a lot of our numbers are kind of off compared to what they used to be because of all the pandemic parameters. But we saw a little bit of a spike when they decriminalized it. And I'm going back in time now. And I think a lot of people thought the decriminalizing was legalizing. We went from the ability to arrest somebody for being in possession of marijuana to being able to give them a citation that cost them almost like a speeding citation. It's not a criminal offense, it's a civil offense. Violating the dog leash law is a civil offense, that's not a criminal offense. So a lot of people had in their mind that it's not illegal anymore, even though we decriminalized it, it still wasn't legal, but it wasn't a criminal offense, it was a civil offense. We saw a spike at that point. And then I think we saw another spike when they legalized it, and then it hasn't been much of an issue that I'm aware of in the past year or so.
Do you know of any spike in hate crimes in surrounding towns, communities?
I'm not aware of any spikes. We have, again, we haven't really had too many regional detectives meetings that we usually do. And when we do a regional detectives meetings, we'll have detectives from area communities. We actually have, we used to have somebody from TJ Maxx come in, somebody from the Postal Service. Sometimes we have people from the military come in. We had some federal officers or detectives come in, and we share information. And I haven't seen anything in terms of spikes for those events. A lot of the stuff that we'll send out will be felony lane gang. We're doing a lot of catalytic converters right now, and they'll send out information on potential suspects and what type of vehicles they're looking for. But I haven't seen much in the region as far as hate crime spikes.
Can you describe a scenario that the homeowner can use gun legally to protect themselves under the Massachusetts gun law?
It's definitely different in Massachusetts than it would be in some of the other states in the country. In Massachusetts, you should do everything you can do to try to get yourself out of there and not have to engage a suspect. But off the top of my head, I can't think of any situations like that in the state for many, 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 many years.
So your advice is mostly get away, don't engage the suspect?
If you can avoid engaging, that's what you should do.
The next question, what do we do if we are treated unfairly by a police officer? I don't know whether there's any specific scenarios here. So the submitter of the question, do you want to unmute yourself and ask a specific question?
I can cover that.
Okay.
Anytime that you haven't been treated by an Acton police officer the way you feel you should have been treated, you can certainly call me, you can email me, you can email or call the deputy chief, and we will take that and we will look into it.
Thanks.
We have a policy that any complaints that we have are all received. They're all inventoried, they're categorized, and they are investigated.
Thank you. In light of the increasing diversity in Acton, have there been any diversity trainings for the Acton Police Department?
We've had a lot of trainings throughout the entire town of Acton employees. We've had a couple of diversity workshops through the town. We had some cultural awareness workshops through the town. And then specifically for the police department, Michael Araquio and Officer Matt Hammer were sent out to become trainers of fair and impartial policing. Mike, do you want to just say a couple words about fair and impartial policing training?
Sure. Yeah, so the fair and impartial police training, we are sending all our officers through it. I only think there might be about 7 officers left out of the 43 that haven't been trained. And naturally, we're doing our best with the COVID restrictions, and that'll be completed by the end of the month. What the training covers is officers understanding, and even humans in general, that we all have bias. We all have life experiences that we bring to each call. What we're trying to do is understand that we have implicit bias, which is the unconscious mind. When we open that door and we see something, what does our body or our mind tell us without us realizing it? We're trying to learn what those things are. When we approach a call, because maybe we had a life experience as a kid, or maybe we heard a joke and we thought, this might apply to this call. All humans do this. Every single person in this room has this form of bias in them from life experiences they have. So we're going over scenarios in this training and discussing things that we feel and going over different stereotypes that other people hear, calls that we may go on, and how we'll respond, and how we can check that bias before we engage, because ultimately we control the outcome of the call. And by us learning what these biases may be, the difference between understanding we have the bias and acting upon the bias is the difference between an officer doing a good job and not. And so that's what we really want to be able to say. Okay, we had a life experience in this situation prior, but we're going to refresh ourselves and start over and handle this call appropriately. And we're not going to act based upon the feelings that we maybe have, or some people may say their gut feeling or something to that effect. So that's really what the training is all about. And it's cultural awareness as well, understanding the different cultures, diversity in town, and then ways that can apply to our call. So it's scenario based, but it's a great conversation amongst officers, especially if you've been on the job and you've seen all these changes in policing over the years, and new procedures and policies, and some of the things that we had to relearn and retrain ourselves when we did the accreditation process.
Thank you. The next one is more like a comment. Want to say thank you. I accidentally dialed 911 when jogging the neighborhood, and a very kind police officer came to the house to check and make sure she's okay. He or she is okay.
I'd like to expand on that if I can. When we get a 911 call, sometimes people are dialing internationally and they dial 911 by mistake. We are going to want to come to your house and see you face to face to make sure that it was an actual accidental call. Because unfortunately, in some domestic violence situations, controlling relationships, somebody might call 911 to try to get away from an abuser, and the abuser is able to hang up the phone before they're able to speak. We want to make sure that that's not the situation. So a lot of people think, it was an accidental, my kid called, I called. Why do you have to send an officer to the house? That's why. We want to make sure that there's nothing happening in the house and everybody's comfortable in the house before we, go back to our regular work.
Great. I'm gonna open up for some of the questions that people want to raise their hand to ask. Sean, do you wanna ask your questions?
Sure. So Chief Burrows, like you said earlier, I first heard your story on the police department update through Lions Club, and it's actually our select board chair, John Benson, who is also on this call, suggests that that might be a good forum for the police department to reach out to the Asian community as well. So I just want to say that. And but one of the most memorable things through your presentation in Lions Club was your story of how you become a police officer. So, you know, we will talk about very serious stuff tonight, and I think that really put a human face on all the brave men, women who's protecting us. So if you don't mind, I would love you to share that story with us again.
I don't mind at all. I grew up in Tingsboro and with my brother and sister. My father was a teacher and my mother was a stay-at-home mom. And then later, once my sister went to school, she became a foster care mother. And she was a 24-hour placement for Lowell and Lawrence. So we had a lot of different characters and kids in our lives over the years. And I wanted to do computers. When I was a senior in high school, there were no computers in the high school. So I took a typing class because I knew I'd be writing papers in college. I went to UMass Lowell as a freshman, got to touch my first computer. I was taking business management courses with a focus on MIS. And after my junior year, one of my buddies from high school said to me, "What are you doing for summer work?" And I said, "I'm going to work at the video store." And I was making $4 an hour back in 1984. And he said, what are you doing that for? He goes, "Why don't you direct traffic? You can make $12 an hour." I said, "Chris, I don't want to be a police officer." He goes, no, you don't have to be a full cop. You can just direct traffic. It's summertime. But if you want to work, you sign up. If you don't want to work, you don't have to. There's no schedule. There's no requirements. I said, "Really?" He said, "Yeah." His father was the chief of police. So I went to see his father. He said, "You have to take this test and go get your gun permit." I had never fired a gun before. So I went to the local gun class. And I turned 21 in March, and I got a call on June 1st that I had been appointed to the police department. So I'm like, "Oh, wow, okay." So all I had taken was a 100-question test at that point on the law. So I went in the police station. Somebody called me and said, "You got appointed." I called Chris. He said, "Hold on. Dad, Rich got appointed." He says, "Tell Rich to be in the office at 7 a.m. tomorrow." So I went in the office the next morning, Tuesday at 7 a.m. and he handed me a badge. He handed me a gun I'd never shot before. He said, "Go up to the police store and get a uniform. You're directing traffic tomorrow." So the next day was Wednesday, June 3rd. And if anybody's familiar with Tingsboro, there's Route 3A that runs up to the Pheasant Lane Mall. It's a very busy road that leads up to Nashua. And they were moving a house. So as they moved the house, they had to take down every telephone wire, every cable, every phone wire. And it was a 13-hour day I was out there. And I'm out there, I got my uniform on, I got the gun on. I forgot to buy a holder for the radio, so I'm holding my portable. And my mother drove down. She was so proud. She wanted this. She actually took a picture of me. I've got that. I still have that today of me directing traffic. And that was it. I fell in love with the job. I started working details. I started riding voluntary in the cruiser, and I never looked back. Luckily, I finished my college degree, and then I got in the police department, and I finally went to the academy in 1989. So that's how I came into police work. And it's so funny because there's so many young people today that really want to get into law enforcement, and they try so hard, and it's not an easy field to get into. But that's how I fell into law enforcement, and I'm so happy I did. I can't think of doing any other job.
Great story. More questions. What are the primary roles and responsibilities of the youth officers in schools?
Michael, it's a layup for you.
Yeah, so I was a school resource officer for 5 years prior to taking this assignment. it's one of the best positions you could have in the department. You're a bridge or a connection for the kids, between the schools and the police department. We have 2 that work during the daytime, school resource officers in the town. There's 10 schools in the town, 6 elementary. We have a junior high and a high school naturally. And we have 2 alternative high schools in town, the Victor School and the Colebrook. So of the 10 schools, there's 1 assigned to the high school. And that was Keith Campbell at the time and Tyler Russell at the moment. And so at the elementary level where I was, K through 6, every day you would engage with the students, be it at recess, at lunch, in their classroom, and all 5th graders went through a program similar to maybe DARE or something that Deputy Chief Cogan taught in the past. And that went over cyberbullying, online safety, peer pressure, substance use, risky situations, and you basically making that connection to the kids. I think Acton does a wonderful job with our school program because other towns only have a school resource officer in their high schools. We have them in elementary and high school. And then we have a juvenile officer who works the 3 to 11 shift, who is available to go to football games. Luke Penny, many of you probably know him. Football games, dances, marching, everything basically involved in the school system. He goes to it in the evening time. But in the daytime, a lot of times we, like I said, back to that 5th grade program, we become staff in a sense to the kids. The goal is that when they see a police officer, and why we do such a good job, I believe, in the elementary level, is because if you're in another town and the first time you meet a police officer is when you're a 9th or 10th grader, you see a police officer, you want to run away. That's what we did in high school. That's what most of you guys probably thought of. Oh my gosh, the cops are here. Why? But if you see it at kindergarten level and when they're playing and rolling a ball with you and in your gym class, then you're going to say, wow, that's Officer Mike. He's my friend. And then everyone who looks like me or wears this uniform must be his friend, and they're my friend. And so that's really what we're trying to do. We're trying to create that environment where Officer Mike is a friend, just like a teacher or a janitor or someone in the school system. And we do a wonderful job because we are there in every school every day, and we typically rotate because of so many different schools. But the high school senior will be there every single day. He has his own office in the main lobby, open door, where students can come in, have a conversation, talk about policing, or even confide in him about things that are going on at home. And some of that stuff obviously is very serious, and then we'll get involved in that as well. We investigate all the crimes that may happen in the school or around the school. And basically they follow up on every call that every juvenile in town is involved in. And so tremendous resource we have in town. And I'm so grateful that Acton and the chief allows us to have 2 in the daytime and 1 in the evening, because other towns aren't as fortunate. And I see the difference. I see the difference because when we go on calls, even 5-10 years later, even some people recognize, the deputy, he was my DARE officer. I've gone on calls, Officer Mike, how you doing? I saw you in my 3rd grade class. And it changes the entire dynamic of the call. And it puts a lot of people at ease because we see people oftentimes at their worst and most traumatic times in their life. So if they can see a familiar face on a call or understand that this badge or this symbol or this patch is a symbol of comfort, then we're doing the right thing.
And we bought the school resource officers a nice pickup truck. So if you see the pickup truck up at the school, one of the school resource officers is up there. And I'm going to let you in on a secret. If any of the kids go to the high school and they go into the school resource office, there's a small putting green behind the desk. They can just ask and he'll take it out. And if you see candy on the counter, it's usually supplied by me. I go up to Costco every couple of months and make sure the candy jar is filled so that it draws the kids in to start those conversations.
Thank you. Next one. I think it was partially answered before. Not sure whether you can comment on this, but what can you share about the recent increase in break-ins in Newton? Are the police forces in surrounding towns working together and share information on something like this?
I'm sorry, did you mention Newton?
Yes, Newton.
I'm not aware of what's going on down in Newton. I'm sorry.
So Ethan, do you want to unmute yourself and elaborate on your question?
Now, if Ethan doesn't have an opportunity to unmute, I think basically what, we have a detective almost crime bulletin that comes out weekly, and we pretty much share it with all surrounding agencies in the state. If there's something or what we would call like a hot call or a hot topic going on, that information is shared throughout, the entire state. We have a fusion center located in Maynard where we share information. And if there's a lot of crime activity in one area, we typically push it out to them, and then they'll share it with the entire state. And because we're involved in so many different networks and so many different detective groups, we share this information constantly. That way, when we look up something simple as a suspicious activity with a license plate, if this car is ran in Newton and also ran in Acton, we'll be able to kind of understand that maybe this is coming our way. So yes, we share information constantly. I'm not exactly familiar with what's going on in Newton, but it says there's an increase in break-ins. So yes, we do share information constantly.
Thank you. Next question. Do we have vacation home check? If so, how to schedule?
We certainly do. Give us a call at the station or email police@actonma.gov, and we'll set that up.
What is the proportion of people own guns in Acton?
I don't have that number off the top of my head.
Yeah, I'm not certain either. I believe at one time we were maybe hovering around 10 or 11%. I think, but that could have been several years ago. But there's a considerable amount of people with license to carry in our town.
Can you elaborate more on cyberbullying? When do people cross the line of free speech and cyberbullying on social media?
Michael, I think that's part of your iSafe program, right?
It is, yeah. Cyberbullying, it's bullying. What we see traditionally bullying, it's just online, so they call it cyberbullying. When you have an intended target, it kind of changes the parameters or the what we would call the elements of a crime. If it's someone hate speech, hate crime, hate-based, bias motivated, all different terms that we typically hear and speak about. Someone has the freedom to say anything they want, outside of the fact that they disturb someone else's peace by, saying bomb in a theater or something to that effect, right? So we would really have to look at each scenario, each case, and kind of try to figure out exactly, one, maybe how the victim perceived it to be, if there is a victim, right? If it was just a public outburst of some sort online, if someone, if someone targeted, is someone being harassed, is someone being threatened. If we have some of those, we can. And what we would do is we'll send all that information, we'll gather all the interviews, we'll put it all together in a report, and we shoot it off to our assistant district attorney, the ADA in Concord. And we're going to do that with every case and basically say, do you think we have the elements for a crime here? Can we charge? But even if we can't make the elements of the crime, which sometimes occurs, and we understand that, what we're looking to do is still protect the victim. And if it's a cyberbullying case in school, we'll change the classes, right? We'll take the bully and we'll remove him from that class. We'll change his schedule or her schedule. So just because we don't necessarily have a crime at all times, we still have a person to protect. We still have a person that we want to feel safe. And that's what we'll kind of do. We'll do a safety plan with that person. If it's an adult and someone's bothering, we'll try to locate the individual or identify the individual. There's harassment prevention orders, there's restraining orders. There's a lot of things, different things we can do, even if we don't have a crime of cyberbullying.
Thank you for the details. Lily, do you want to ask your question?
Yeah, sure. So I'm very excited to see the dog because I'm a big fan of the dog on Facebook. I'm #1 fan. So John, this is a question for you. What is a typical day for Officer Zane look like? If I really dying to bump into Officer Zane, where can I find you and Zane?
Sure. So we are typically out on the Wednesday through Friday. We're out during the day. I'd say anywhere from 7:15 to 7:30 in the morning, right up until about 2:30 in the afternoon. We're out around town. You can find me anywhere in town. I drive the car number 12. So if you see the car number 12, that's me, that's Zane. He'll be in the back, sometimes taking a nap, sometimes coming through the window, trying to say hello to me. Typically, we're in the station during the morning. Zane goes over and makes sure everybody's ready for the day and greeting everybody at the public safety building. As the weather is starting to change now and we're getting outside more, we're going to visit the firefighters and the EMTs and the paramedics in town at the various fire stations. Recently now, again, we're getting into the schools. We did, how many schools did we do, Zane? I think we did 5 preschool visits last Thursday or Friday. See if I can share my screen here. We did, we had a great time with, I don't know if you, can you guys see that? So we did about 5 of these classes during the day, and the kids got a chance, like Mike said. I'm raising my daughter here in town. It just bridges the gap and it introduces the kids at a young age to make the kids know that we're your friends. We're not. They can grow up seeing Officer Mike, myself, the people that are out there every single day out in the community, and to know that we're here and we're approachable. And I can't tell you how many visits that I've done with just individuals, adults and children alike, that have had bad experiences with dogs and that are able to talk about it, and actually within, say, 5-minute period of time, actually change their perception and thank me for being around a dog, and again changing that perception against of dogs in general. We have most of our officers, the chief and I worked on a baseball card program, or trading card program as we call it, for most of our officers, and that puts a face to the name. I'm sure a lot of the kids have Officer Mike when he was in the school. Zane has his own card. Everybody I try and meet. In fact, Chief, I think I'm just about down to my last pack, so we need to order some more of those. But it's a great, it provides information about Zane, where he came from, his training, and again with the officers, on the back of it, it provides their name, how long they've been here, what their interests are outside of the police department. So it gives them a chance to know the officer a little bit more, and again our contact information. So if there's any chance that they want to have a follow-up dialogue or question or comment, they can do that. But Zane's around town. He's with me 24/7. When I'm not working, he's with me. We're at the schools for literally 24/7. Yeah, the 5:30 wake up call is usually Zane. So
Lily, do me a favor, send an email to police@actonma.gov, and we're going to make a visit happen.
Awesome. Thank you.
No problem.
Only because you're the number one
Appreciate
fan.
Next question is kind of follow up on the previous question, one of the previous questions. When you said try not to engage the intruder, do you mean it's better to leave the house in case there is an intruder?
Yes, there's nothing in the house worth your life or any of your family's lives. In my 35 years, I investigated one home invasion, and it was related to drugs. In my 35 years, I have not had a stranger intruder come into somebody's house and engage the people that live there. They make movies about it to try to scare people, as a horror, as a thriller. It's just not something we typically see in my last community, Tingsboro or in Acton. Jimmy's been in town since 1984, Jimmy?
Yeah, 84.
How many times have you responded to a call for a subject in a house confronting people that live there?
I can think of one instance we had maybe 10 or 15 years ago. And the person was just recently released from jail, and it ended well. We were able to find the person, place them under arrest, and no one was hurt. But it was because the people took swift action. They got out of the house. They got a good description of the vehicle the person was in, and they were able to provide that to us. And I believe he was stopped in Littleton and again placed under arrest. So it ended well. But there was no relationship between them. It was a coincidence that this house was picked. It was not a targeted event in any way. It was just a coincidence.
Next question is probably a little bit dark, I guess. Can any police officer share the worst crime you ran into in recent years?
Unfortunately, we had a murder in West Acton back in 2017. So that's probably the worst call we've had in this community.
Is that a targeted or random crime?
That was a mental health domestic violence call.
Next one. Would you please share more details about the vacation homes check service? What can be done and what cannot be done?
So basically, if you're going to be going away for a week, 2 weeks, we'd like to know if you leave us a contact number in case of something happening. We'll ask for what cars should be in the driveway, what lights should be on, and then we give that to the patrol officers in that area, and they can do checks on that house to make sure nothing's going on. It helps for us to be able to drive by, but the biggest benefit is if you let your neighbors know, because your neighbors are there all the time. We get to drive by once in a while.
I have gone through all the questions in the chat window. Thanks to Burrows and all the officers for answering a gazillion questions. Anyone still have any pending questions that you want to ask? You can raise your hand or put it in the chat window.
So I am Sherry Tan, and I'm like, my older daughter is actually a classmate of our son, Joey, of Officer Stoney's. So I've been living Acton for almost at least 12 years. I mean, it's very safe and it's very friendly neighborhood. Like until I feel like until the pandemic hits. So with all those rumors and the conspiracies like around the internet, and it was like the first time I started to think of the safety of my family. Like this is the first time. And then so I'm really thankful and really grateful, like we have this session, like we can face to officers. Like right now it's pandemic, we couldn't see each other, and also like especially I would say the like a few weeks ago about the shooting, and that's also kind of stirred a bit, like a little worried about, is this like targeting to Asian American. So I just want to thanks for the organizer, and thanks for the officers, give a lot of clarification, like especially I would say as a Asian community, we are in a way we are closed circle. We kind of have the information within ourselves, and I just feel this is we gain a lot of knowledge. So thanks a lot.
Thanks, Cheryl.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, hi, this is Angie. I want to follow up with Sharon, which I would like also to express our gratitude. Our gratitude of your services and your dedication, and really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
This has been a very informative session, and very much appreciate you taking the time off of your busy day to talk with us. Most of the participants today are folks from the Asian community. So I think it's a great information session for all of us. So if there's no more questions, we're gonna close the session. So on behalf of the Asian American Civic Engagement Alliance, thank everyone for participating, and thanks the officers for giving us great information and let us feel more at ease in this kind of turbulent time.
Thank you again for having us. And as we come out of the COVID restrictions, we're hoping to have a Citizens Police Academy. That's a great opportunity to come in. We typically run it for 8 weeks, and you get to meet a lot of the different officers and hear some of the different things that we do. We're going to start Coffee with a Cop as soon as we can. And Zane will be at most of the Coffee with the Cops. And we're going to try to do our National Night Out. And that's in August, John?
First Tuesday of August.
First Tuesday of August. And we'll basically open up the police station. We'll figure out what the restrictions are at the time. We give tours of the building. You get to walk through the dispatch area and see the dispatchers and the stations they work at. And we walk through the building. You get to see the cruisers, the blue lights, the holding facility. It's a great opportunity to see your tax dollars at work and see what we do at the police station. John came through last year, I believe, or 2 years ago, with his crew, and I think he enjoyed it. So thank you very much.
Yeah. This is Angie again. Can I add one more thing? When the opportunity arrives, I think the Chinese community will appreciate it to share some Chinese dumpling with you guys. So let us know.
I think Michael's got the biggest smile right now.
Okay.
I actually had those for dinner with my daughter tonight. So yes, absolutely.
Yes, thank you very much.
And if I left my email in the box, so I know a lot of times during these kind of forums, people don't want to ask questions. They don't think it maybe fits this forum or what have you, but please send any questions you have, concerns or anything at all to my email that's in the chat box. I look forward to hearing from you. I appreciate you guys having us. And just so you know, everyone's aware, and I know it was a lighthearted conversation. It was very awesome meeting everyone. But we do understand that, you know, your questions came from a sense of what's going on in the nation. And we do recognize that. And I want you guys to understand that, you know, we're always going to continue doing the best we can for service for the town and safeguarding all our residents. And when you guys feel that there's something concerning to you or suspicious, please reach out to us, whether it's the emergency or non-emergency line, because we're always willing to have a conversation and always willing to learn or open up dialogue with anyone from the community. So thank you.
Thank you, officers and Deputy Chief and Chief Burrows, and also thank you, Shirley, for a wonderful session you moderated.
Awesome. Thanks all.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
Bye.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Good night.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Good night.